You have to lead with what you expect to receive. Our greatest message will be silent. It will be how you live your life. Jesus didn't die for you to settle. He died for you to be saved. Any of you still gassed up on that 2023 New Year's energy? I mean, we're like a week out, and I still wish my garbage man today a Happy New Year's. But how many of you blew your New Year's resolution already? Be honest. My name is Felix, if we haven't met yet and you're new here. And if you're back, you already know that I believe transparency can be your superpower if you manage it well. Now, last week, we started the new year together with a message about how to approach the new year in a new way. I was sick as a dog. I don't know if you noticed my voice or anything, but I only got out of bed to share that message. Tanya had gotten sick on Christmas and she had passed it along to me. Thanks, babe. And luckily during the week, Lion didn't catch it. But you know, I couldn't even picture one of you guys not having someone to gather with on New Year's Day, so I just felt compelled to show up. At PSA, I promised to preach only what I practice. Now, how am I gonna ask you guys to show up and share what's happening here and to put God first and not do the same? No, I'm not gonna judge you or call you out, but I will call you up to the highest person I believe you can become and that the world needs us to be. I believe the way that we do one thing shows up on how we do many things. So we need to keep challenging ourselves to improve, because life is a team sport and your community that you keep has a great impact on that. So I want to talk about spotting a good community today. Now, I don't know how many jocks are watching or if somehow you missed this story, but while I was laid up in bed, I took a scroll on Twitter and I saw my friend posted, "They just need to cancel the game." Well, curiosity got my attention and I started clicking through, and then I saw that hit that Damar Hamlin took during the Bills-Bengals game in the playoffs. I played football as a quarterback and I endured some really strong hits, so hard that they left me speaking like a chipmunk for the next couple plays that I needed to call. But thankfully, I never got knocked out. After the tackle, Damar took a few steps and then just collapsed. The paramedics ran on the field to give him CPR. An ambulance was driven onto the field and they rushed him to the ER. And I'm kind of sad to say, injuries are so common in football. It's such a violent sport. But what I had never seen was simultaneously taking place in the background. A few players had called each other together and started a prayer circle on the field. They were joined by the other team, by some employees. I was so blown away by the beauty that I started crying and praying in my own room. When my wife came upstairs and she came into the room, I wanted to show her this beautiful moment so bad. And when I started looking for the link, I came across this other link. And it was this host on ESPN, Dan Orlovsky. Excuse me if I said your name wrong. He took a moment in his broadcast to stop and pray on air, and his two co-hosts joined him. Now, I know some of you watching this might not be a believer in prayer. So if God's not real and prayer changes nothing for you, you shouldn't be bothered. You may be more comfortable with sending positive thoughts and energy, but what about the possibility that God could be real and the author of all thoughts and the creator of all energy could show up? It could only be net positive. Who would not want a force so uniting that it can right all wrongs and it brings all walks of life together? Whether you believe in him or not, he still believes in you. Who would not want a community to surround yourself with, that even if your goals were at odds, you can still come together and pray for the best outcome? Regardless of your position, your team, your beliefs, or the place you find yourself on your spiritual journey, you can still come together on what's good. These people were risking their jobs boldly to put their thoughts together and channel them towards their fellow fallen brother. The man on the ground whose agenda went against half the people on the field and probably half of the stadium. But they say that crisis reveals character, and what you do for those who can do nothing for you says the most about you. I know that prayer circle left that field into the stands, and not only into my home, I believe it made it to God's ears. I wish I knew the exact person that made that first call to prayer on the field. What a courageous move. I'm inspired by you, and may God bless you 1,000,000 times over. In these times with so many questionable intentions, it is so important that we take time to highlight people taking the high road, people that are worth journeying with, even if it's only to see how your leadership is measuring up. I have often met people with miraculous stories, and I actually felt closer to God in their presence solely because what they had experienced. All of our stories are so important to share, not only for you, but for those they could impact. But how do we find who can help us write these stories in our lives? What do we use to hold ourselves to a notable standard? Who's worth following, falling, and fighting for? I use this scripture to spotlight some admirable leadership qualities that are worth following and implementing wherever we may find ourselves. And I know some of you might want to disregard your own leadership potential, but we are all following and leading someone at all times. So don't disqualify yourself. The Apostle Paul is writing to his young protege, Timothy, about some values to look for and to exude in community. In this specific instance, it's speaking about a church, but they are valid everywhere. In 1 Timothy 3, it says, "Here is a trustworthy saying, whoever aspires to be an overseer desires a noble task. Now the overseer is to be above reproach, faithful to his wife, temperate and self-controlled, respectable, hospitable, and able to teach, not given to drunkenness, not violent but gentle, not quarrelsome, not a lover of money. He must manage his own family well and see that his children obey him, and he must do so in a manner worthy of full respect. If anyone does not know how to manage his own family, how can he take care of God's church? He must not be a recent convert, or he may become conceited and fall under the same judgment as the devil. He must also have a good reputation with outsiders, so that he will not fall into disgrace and into the devil's trap." Here's some other red flags and like a more current lingo to be aware of. Beware of communities centered around a single gifted, charismatic individual and their unique vision. Beware when said individual has a lack of accountability and is surrounded by hand-picked yes men and women. Beware when growing a crowd is more important than growing the individuals that are in the community. Beware of extreme emphasis on their way is the only way, and it's so special that nobody else would get it. Beware of other friends or associates that were once held in a high regard are now written off as bitter or gossips. Beware when people who are hurt or in a disagreement are no longer worth your time. Just focus on what we're telling you instead. A community, a job, a relationship, a church, it's not to be looked at as a one-way experience or interview. We need to interview or converse with each other and sincerely want what's best for each other, even when we're not seeing eye to eye at the moment. Some healthy things to look forward to is putting God first and His mission above any leader's mission. Leaders that are transparent about who they answer to and what their opinions are. Investing in other people is a priority over investing in their own personal missions. Leaders that are accessible and would fill in their roles even if it was not requested of them. The organization praises like-minded organizations and is even willing to admit that they might not have all the answers. When people have been hurt and are seeking healing and closure, that becomes a priority. People who disagree or have concerns with certain practices are not told to be stifled or alienated. You will never change with the people around you constantly approving your behavior. We have to pick our communities wisely because we're choosing family that we will allow to maybe hurt you, but you also have to be willing to hurt for them. That prayer circle for Damar Hamlin was the same place where his injury came from, the same community. Now, I don't know what Damar's beliefs are, but his eye black, that grease that you put under your eyes to block the glare from the sun or the lights, was in the shape of a cross. I just saw he was up and chatting with people, and one of his first questions was, who won the game? They let him know the game was postponed, but they also let him know that a fund had raised over $6 million to make sure his kids were okay. I guess his faith paid off. But will the faith you have in your community pay off? If you can't answer that immediately, you need to be the change you want to see. You have to lead with what you expect to receive. We can't keep handicapping communities by receiving what they have to offer as good enough and not calling them out. Jesus didn't die for you to settle. He died for you to be saved. There's too much talking about it and not enough being about it and actually walking it out. You can preach bravery, but still act cowardly. Jesus didn't talk his way there. He walked it out. Our greatest message will be silent. It will be how you live your life. The scriptures call us to go and make disciples of many nations. It calls us to be the church, not just attend it. It says that where two or more are gathered, that there he will be. I may have not seen a football game that day, but I was taken to church and I saw God's people move on his behalf, regardless of what the odds were. I pray you grow in your faith and in your leadership, and you choose to put truth above all other things. I pray that you grow in your understanding that leadership is not about being right all the time or the position that you hold in the moment. It's almost entirely based on character, integrity, honesty, accountability, and most importantly, trust. It's about being able to listen not only to what we want to hear, but rather what we need to hear. Great communities and great leaders don't run from the truth, they run towards it. I want to close by thanking God for showing up in a mighty way in Damar Hamlin's life and in the lives of all those people who prayed and everyone's eyes who were able to witness it and have seen these events take place all week. God, I feel closer to you because of it. And this is precisely what our lives have the opportunity to do for someone else's faith when we fall on the field and they're watching us from the stands. Until next week, let's get in the game and let's love more. And I'll see you at the next PSA. Happy New Year, y'all. I'm back in the game. I know I'm a week late, but don't count me out. Check out some of these other messages right here. Share them with somebody. Let's look out for each other. And I'll see you next week.